In this video, we're going to be talking about disturbance. The AP Environmental and Science exam focuses a lot on how humans disturb the ecosystem and what are some of the solutions we have to remedy these disturbances. So what is a disturbance? A disturbance is caused by either a physical change, a chemical change, or a biological change. And it will result in a change in population size. And it could be an increase in population or a decrease in population. And just a reminder, increases in population aren't necessarily always a good thing. It could be an increase in a population that might take over and be the disturbance, such as an invasive species. One word that you should be familiar with is anthropogenic. An anthropogenic disturbance is one caused by humans. So anthropogenic, human-caused disturbance. When we're looking at human disruptions, some of the things that we look at for the ecosystem to see how well the ecosystem is responding from the disturbance is looking at the resistance of the ecosystem and the resilience of the ecosystem. So resistance is looking at how much that disruption affects the flow of energy and matter in that ecosystem. So the higher resistance, the less effect on the flow. Resilience is how well that ecosystem can bounce back after or during the disruption. So let's take a look at an example of the disruption of drought. So during a drought, soil is going to dry. And when the soil dries out and the rain then lands on the soil, it makes it harder for that soil to absorb more water. If you have a plant that's really dry and you start pouring water, that because the soil is so dry at the top, it's not necessarily going to initially soak in. It's going to stay at the top and very slowly the soil will reabsorb that water and then bring it back down in. So a slightly wet soil is going to pull in more water because the water is attracted to the water, cohesion and adhesion, than if we had dry soil. So when we have rain, the water doesn't absorb into the soil as well. And then there's going to be a change in the soil. And because of this, there's going to be more drying out. And then there's going to be more drought damage because the soil is going to probably have erosion down the line. It's not going to be able to hold as many plant material because there's not going to be enough water absorption into that soil. So this is almost a positive feedback mechanism here that when there's a drought, the soil dries out, and if it rains, it doesn't absorb in as well, it runs off, it's going to cause erosion, which is then going to cause that soil here that dried out to dry out even more and not be able to hold any water, not be able to grow any plants, and it's just going to exacerbate the problem. So one area of ecology is restoration ecology. Restoration ecology is trying to restore an ecosystem to its original state. This is happening in New England quite a bit. Back in the colonial era, a lot of dams were put up on the rivers to release water. You're going to increase the amount of water downstream. You're going to reduce the amount of water upstream. And so you're going to be changing the the flow of that water to what it's been used to for the past however long, and now you're changing it, so you do have to be careful when you do that. But restoring an area to its natural state is restoration ecology. A lot of organizations that are doing this are called watershed associations, especially in the United States. They are looking to keep the waterways in the state that into their original state. And what a watershed is basically an area where all the they are looking to keep the waterways in the state that into their original state. And what a watershed is basically an area where all the water essentially drains to the same place, to a particular area. So this could be several rivers, ponds, lakes, streams that are all going in towards one direction. It might be a single riverway. It could be a riverway and all its tributaries. It really depends on the area that you're looking at. And I do know that a lot of rivershed associations come together to protect their watershed. I know in Massachusetts, a lot of watershed associations are looking at dams that were put up 50 to 100 years ago and trying to restore the flow of the original waterway. So this is a picture of a watershed. You can see basically it's showing you all the waterways that are coming into this one particular drainage area. And when we're thinking about watersheds, one of the things that we need to think about is if you have a problem on a waterway, let's say you have a golf course next to a very small stream and there's fertilizer and it leaches and runs off into the small little stream, that's going to then lead into a bigger stream or into a river, which is then going to lead to either a lake, a pond, the ocean. And what damage could that small little bit of fertilizer that's in that one particular golf course going to do all the way downstream? It could be something minor like that, or it could be big, where a company like Kodak is dumping all of their toxic dye waste from their camera film operations into waterways, and then it's leading into the ocean and causing a whole bunch of problems down that watershed. So those are kind of the disturbances that we need to think about when we're thinking about watersheds, is how one particular location is affecting the rest downstream. There's also the intermediate disturbance hypothesis. What this states is basically that a medium size or intermediate size disturbance causes the ecosystem to be more diverse than a area that has very little disturbance or a lot of disturbance. So when you have kind of the two extreme disturbances where you have a lot of disturbance or very little, you're going to have less diversity in those areas than a place where there's just kind of like an intermediate amount of disturbance. That's going to be where it seems to have the most diversity in that ecosystem. Well, that is disturbances. Thank you for